So for those who don't know, last week there was a matchmaking stream with SK and J3 done with Gavin and oh my god, I don't remember this person's name. Morgan Madron. Okay. So basically they did a whole thing talking about matchmaking. Normally I'd watch these live and react to it, but I had between the Stream Awards trip and getting sick, which I'm still a little bit sick. I might have missed a good chunk. Let's get it.
Mine. Today we have SK and myself interviewing Gavin and Morgan. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Morgan.
Also, they're a little bit louder on this
I'm,
end. This is good.
A senior engineer on Team 4. I
Oh,
mostly work on
Jay's
matchmaking
alerts.
these days, but I've also helped out with like the ranked Comp 2.0 feature that we shipped. I've been on the team for almost 5 years, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Gavin?
Hey, I'm Gavin Winter. You can just call me Winter.
This is one of the greatest people at Blizzard. I'm just saying.
There are too many Gavins
One of the best
team.
people there. This guy literally genuinely fucking cares. He's in streamers chats all day long, answering questions, talking about things that are good, you know, looking for feedback. I actually watched him one time when ranked was kind of scuffed. He literally went to Emong's chat to ask for a specific code at a certain time of a ranked game, just so he could take a peek to see how it looked. Like, it was cool as shit. So this guy's big pog. There's gonna be good stuff coming out of this.
I joined Team 4 in early 2021, so I've been around for a little while. I'm a systems designer, so that means not a hero designer. That means I don't do balance or anything like that. My main contribution to Overwatch 2 launch was the ping system, the work I did there. I've also worked on challenges. I worked on competitive mystery heroes recently, and I'm actually going to do a minor spoiler for something coming in season 4. I didn't mention this to you guys, but I've been working on something we call stranded spawn. So that's kind of like fixing the problem of getting back spawned in sad spawn rooms and then not getting to be with your team as much.
Wait, what?
And but before we get started,
so like on push?
I want to do a quick shout out to Morgan. So like just to talk about the way that we work together.
Like push or escort where you get bad spawn and you don't have to walk all the way there. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Our most common interaction is I will DM Morgan on Slack and be like, hey, can you take a look at this match with me? Because you guys, you creators, people online are constantly forwarding us matches that, you know, we see bad matches happen and we want to look at those and break those down.
That's what I meant.
So like that tends to be the way that he and I talk the most, but we talk constantly about this stuff. So Morgan does all the actual hard work on this system. He's the actual smart person in the room, just to be super clear about that. And
that's a team effort, Gavin.
Okay, all right. For Overwatch 2 launch, you know, one of our main goals with matchmaking, Morgan has said this before, but I just want to reiterate, was to improve queue times. Because like in Overwatch 1, you know, one of the biggest complaints we had was bad queue times. For season 1 and 2, we feel like we did mostly solve that.
But for 10 queues.
Since launch, Morgan has been doing a lot of like incredible work to set us up for future improvements. And then speaking briefly to those improvements, because obviously they didn't go the way we wanted in season 3, we do want to apologize for those bad matches that happened in season 3, those wider matches. You know, that was like never our goal. It was never our goal to
golds
have like
or plats
in a GM game. That should have never happened. That was an unintended.
I shouldn't have talked over him. I'll let him talk.
Happened in season improvements. Just let him talk. And then speaking briefly to those improvements, because obviously they didn't go the way we wanted in season 3, we do want to apologize for those bad matches that happened in season 3, those wider matches. You know, that was never our goal. It was never our goal to have like a plat in a GM game. That should have never happened. That was an unintended side effect of those improvements, like those structural changes. It's all like a super complex system, and that part of it caught us off guard, I would say. So we'll get a lot of benefits out of those improvements going forward, and we can talk more about those as we answer questions. But yeah, we do just want to apologize for those, and then I'll hand it over to Jay and SK.
Yeah, I see you saying in chat that it's tightened up over the season. They did definitely, like, you can tell they worked their asses off on the matchmaking through season 3. Like, at the start of season 3, it was pretty for a lot of people. I actually kind of enjoyed the fast queue times, though. Like, it was kind of funny. But you can tell they've definitely been working hard on it.
Awesome. No worries. I had like one of the questions that we were gonna ask today was actually like in that what you were talking about. But SK, would you like to start or would you like me to start?
I think I can get the first question.
Sure.
Okay. The first one is winner's queue and loser's queue real? How can people go on huge loss streaks where every game feels unwinnable, and then huge win streaks where every game feels unlosable?
No, SK did not ask this.
That's a good question. So there's no winner's queue or loser's queue. It's all the same queue. We only have one queue. Well, one queue per thing that you can click on, right? So ultimately, like, it's actually really weird. So when you look at like how often
they had people write down the questions they wanted on social media, so the questions that's the questions they're going off of. I've done one of these. I kind of know how it works. I can ask questions of my own or whatever, but I am not going to take that question to a dev seriously because there's no chance it's real. Like, it's like when I say 450, when I say like, you've heard Seagull, me, Emong, we all joke about like the 450-50 keeping you down. The winners queue and losers, we're fucking memeing. We're all having a good time. So like, when I get opportunities like this, I try to ask like questions I think will be like relevant or like maybe more niche. 50-50, like winners queue, losers queue. It's obviously not real. I mean, it's cool to get it out of the way with at least, but
people actually go on like
kind of
10 loss streaks or 10 win streaks. It's pretty rare, and it actually happens about as often as you would expect if you were just flipping coins. The problem is it still happens, you know, like you can flip 10 heads in a row and that still happens, and it feels horrible, right? Like I actually, this happened to me over over Christmas break, I think, where it was like I went like 1-9 one night, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? But we're looking at it. Our data analyst June, she's been doing some investigation to try to like help us understand what's going on, because it's not intentional. Like actually our goal is to make it less likely than chance that you're going on like a win or loss streak, because your rate is moving in response to you winning or losing. So so she did some initial investigation. We're still kind of early in this. We're still trying to understand what happens, but kind of I think there, at least my suspicion is there's like a lot of different things that can cause this. Like for example, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but like sometimes if you play at like different times of day or like weekend versus weekdays,
okay, this is gonna be important.
The population. What?
I was gonna say I could tell the weekend queues are oof.
Yeah, like it feels different.
So I have okay. I have not watched this. This is me coming to you first to see if they say it. There's a few factors. There's weekend queues. Yes, that's for like most people, right? But there's another factor. In GM Top 500, when OWL players scrim, games get worse or get incredibly sweaty if they're on. So basically, to my knowledge, scrims start around 12 to 2 EST, somewhere in that range, right? Depending on who it is. If you get on before 12 EST, say you get on 11 or 10 EST, you will bump into OWL players in top 500, and you don't see them all day until about 6 to 8 o'clock PM EST. AM or PM? PM. They're not scrimming at 2 a.m. It's just not a thing. Once they're out of scrims and they get dinner and whatnot, then they hop on for a few hours. Those nighttime queues go crazy. That's when you see the 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Like, it's just nothing but the OWL games all night long. And that's why most of the OWL streamers, or people who used to be an OWL stream, you're like Supers or Space, like would always stream at night. That's what they'd always do. Those games would always go crazy. What he's probably talking about is things like that, like outside forces, actually f up the matchmaker pretty bad.
Different, right?
Yeah.
And when there's like a different population of people playing, that actually changes kind of like what MMR means, because MMR is just a measure of like the relative skill of everybody who's kind
holidays,
of like
weekends, yeah.
And so
those
you'll notice that like if you normally play like only on weekends,
season
and then
starts
play on a weekday, or only play on evenings and then play, you know, earlier in the day, you might feel miscalibrated. And we're still trying to figure out like even quantifying like how much of that is the problem versus there's probably like 5 other things that can be causing that too. And long term, I think hopefully we can kind of pick up on the, it's like if you're going 1 and 9 or whatever, like probably something's wrong and we should be adapting faster. We're just not quite that smart yet, so it's like figuring that out.
Yeah, there's another thing there. There is this top 500 specific phenomenon, and I know that
Oh,
I'm sure everybody watching today is top
wait.
500, so this probably applies
Here
to
it
you.
comes.
It's possible that at some off times, that everyone in queue is worse than you, according to the matchmaker. So we've seen, I guess everybody's probably seen Sureforce rant, but there are these moments where if you're in the top 10 players, we might not be able to give you a better player, especially if you're playing at 3 a.m. So
These are the 2 months. We're just watching some.
that could make you feel like you're in a loser's queue, but that is a pretty specific situation.
Yeah, but I don't expect that, especially at 3 a.m. Like all the best players are going to be out there. But I have noticed that one thing that
Okay, he didn't say what I thought he was going to say, but
I usually do morning streams and night streams.
Really
and
kind of
usually
implied.
my morning stream. Well, this is more in Overwatch 1, not necessarily Overwatch 2 right now. But in Overwatch 1, my morning streams would be like, it's okay. It's like a bunch of people who are at work, whatever. I'm streaming, but nighttime queues are like so much more sweaty than the morning because you have all the Overwatch League players and like you have a lot more people off of work and whatnot. So it does, I think the time of day, like you were saying, is like a huge impact as well. And it's funny that you said you have to be very unlucky to like go on these huge win streaks or loss streaks, because I won 5 in a row on Friday and then I lost 9 in a row. So
yeah, that's painful.
Yeah, that was very pain.
I feel for you.
It
Yeah,
feels
hopefully
like
we can make it better.
it feels like there's a lot less win streaks and loss streaks this season than there was the seasons before. Because with season 1 and 2, I felt like I was always win streak, loss streak, win streak, loss streak, win streak, loss streak. But now it's pretty even.
That's really good to hear. I mean, we have made some kind of like first steps at trying to improve. According to the statistics we've seen, we haven't really meaningfully bent the curve down of of like that long tail of really bad win and loss streaks. A lot of it also is potentially just, we added a lot of new players to the game, so there's just kind of a lot more uncertainty in the system in total. If you think about like
the new
Overwatch
players.
1, like right before we shipped Overwatch 2, like the people who were still playing Overwatch 1 at that point, it was like everybody had played hundreds of hours. It was all like our very hardcore,
there's no new
dedicated
GM players. They don't exist.
And now there's like a lot more new players that we just really don't know anything about. So it's like I kind of imagine, like, we haven't actually visualized this, but I'm kind of imagining like the uncertainty about ratings kind of like sloshing around in the system, and we're still trying to kind of like push that down and get everything kind of as good as it can be.
So when the game came out, they were actually Bronze 5. Like they figured out that new players were rated at Bronze 5. I wonder what the new one is. I'd be curious.
Okay.
They learn how to play.
That goes into my next question.
Or are they still Bronze 5?
A lot of people are actually saying it in chat, and I want to hear what your thoughts are. So what do you guys have to say about the people who claim forced 50-50 is real?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, that's a funny one. So so there's no forcing. Whenever we make a match, what we do at that point is we're just looking at what your rating is at that moment, right? So we don't know if you've won 5 games in a row or lost 5 games in a row. That's completely invisible to that part of the matchmaker that's just looking at like, we have these 10 players, let's try to make this match. What you'll notice is if a new player comes in and they're winning more than 50% of their matches, their rating is going to be going up, right?
Yeah,
because
that's true.
Obviously they're like they're better than we think they are, right? Because at the end of the day, if you win a match, your rating goes up, and if you lose a match, your rating goes down. The amount that you go up or down is a little more complicated, but ultimately, it's like if you're winning like 60% of your matches, your rating's going to be going up.
Yep.
Once you get...
That's why people always like, how do I climb? You win more matches than you lose. That's literally how easy it is. Now, there's other tips and stuff along the way, but that is literally how you climb. It doesn't matter how you perform. There used to be performance-based MMR or SR below Diamond. I don't know if that exists anymore. I don't think it does. They said, I actually think they confirmed that it doesn't exist anymore. There is like systems to get you out faster if they detect you, like they think you're like smurfing or something. But other than that, though, I I think they did. I don't think there's actually performance-based SR anymore. It's actually just wins and losses.
Your rating to kind of where it's supposed to be, you will naturally end up winning and losing about 50.
False. I have a 70% win rate on Ramatra and still stuck in bronze. Well, I can tell you right the now, one of three things is happening. One, you play other characters and you suck really bad on those characters. And so you don't climb because you win some games on Ramatra and then you lose all the games on other characters. Two, you either don't play enough games to actually move. So you play like 5 games and you're look at me, I have a 70% win rate. You don't play enough games to actually move your rating though. You're too afraid to play or you don't have enough time, whatever it is. Or 3, you're bullshitting me. Because I promise you that's not how that works.
50% of the time, because otherwise your rating would still keep moving, right? So that's kind of like the natural end point of, you know, once your rating is kind of calibrated. But we're not forcing it. Like, you know, there's nothing that's like, oh, you won 2 matches, so now we're going to force you to lose. You know, we don't do anything like that. It's just kind of, you know, how the system naturally ends up working.
That makes sense. Okay,
Hopefully I've convinced at least a few people. I don't know.
The 50-50.
I don't think you convinced them, but you explained it. So
Yeah, you explained it.
They
Convincing.
can't be convinced.
I can't even convince anyone to do it. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Wow, just straight up like, no, we don't believe you, but it's
The
okay.
next one's
It's
kind
cool.
of already answered at the beginning, but it's, did the system increase how many skill divisions players can be a part in each match? Because in Overwatch 1, it was super rare to have a diamond in a GM lobby.
Yeah, so ultimately, this number has not changed a whole lot. Well, outside of when we shipped Season 3. When we shipped Season 3, it got way worse at Grandmaster, and that was kind of unintended, and then we fixed it, and then we broke it again, and we fixed it again.
There was some fixing and some breaking,
Yeah. And actually last night we just made another config change that may have made it a little bit worse. So actually after this call, I'll probably be taking a look at that and, you know, making some more
I
adjustments.
love how they lose it when they talk about fixing shit, they break it again.
Ultimately, like kind of that range, we don't really get to control that range too much because much of that is dictated more by just, you know, for non-Grandmaster, it's mostly dictated by things like grouping. At Grandmaster, it's largely dictated by just, you know, how many people are online. But like if you look at like that curve, you know, it's very consistent from Overwatch 1. Still, we would like to make it better. At Grandmaster, it's going to be hard to do, but it would be great to make it better. A lot of it, you'll notice, you know, before Season 4 anyways, the way that ranks work, your rank is not 100% tied to your rating, right? It kind of moves towards it.
That's why the resets were stupid.
These, you know, the like rank decay at the beginning of the season. So I think the perception of the issue is a lot worse than it actually is. That said, you know, it's still a problem
because the resets still were happening
as good as we possibly can. I think last I checked, if you look at a match that has like a GM1 in it, I think about 1% of the time it'll have as far down as a Diamond 1 in it. So that's like our 1%. It's going to be that bad.
And those tend to be off hours. Those were the 3 a.m. games that where GM was playing. And
okay, that's actually something really important. I hate to say it, but I see way too many players and even fellow content creators who stream and play at like 3 in the morning. And they're like, oh my God, I had a low masters player or a diamond player on my team. Guys, you're playing at 3 a.m. You're not going to get a perfect game. You try to play at 3 a.m., they're going to eventually need to put you with some teammates. Like, you want to sit there for 3 hours and just not get a game? I hate to say it, but it's like, it's so dumb sometimes to listen to and it's like to read. And like, it's why I don't even like use Twitter that much anymore. It kind of pisses me off because I see like that all the time. It's like, dude, if you're playing at 3 a.m., most normal people don't play Overwatch at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. The people playing 3 a.m. on a Tuesday are degenerate kids, college students that are kind of degenerate, people who are unemployed, streamers, people who work night shift that are like off that night / you know, like sick, doesn't have anything to do the next day or has tomorrow off and they're just being like up really late. That pool is really small. It's not that big. So it's like, what they're saying here is super important because like they definitely get hammered all the time by people saying like, oh, but this game sucks. I had a diamond at 1 a.m., 3 a.m. It's like, dude, stop.
There weren't other choices.
Those are mostly edge cases.
I feel like that makes a lot of sense though, because at 3 a.m. there's not a lot of people queuing, and especially how you guys said it was kind of interesting. Like you said, for the GM1 players or the GM players, like it's based on like who's online, and I was actually kind of curious. To, like I don't know if this is like something that you guys have. Let me see. Oh, never mind. I lost track. Never mind.
No problem.
It's all good.
I'll probably think of it again.
Yeah, let us know if you think of it.
Sorry, you go.
No, you go. I had like a brain fart. Chat.
I will say it's really cool to know how often you guys are actually updating changes to this matchmaker, because like we don't really know.
I brain farted.
Unless it's in a patch note, but it's really cool to see how often it is.
Yeah, that's actually going forward. We're gonna try to put
Bro
matchmaking changes into patch notes more often. We had never really thought to do that, but it turns out people are interested, right? So, so that's been actually really cool. Like, now we're, now it's like, okay, how do we describe? Like, we made this weird change. How do we actually even describe it? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, fair.
Yeah. You guys good on that one? I could go to the next one. Sorry. So this is a very I've actually been wondering this one for a very long time, so I kind of want to ask it. So should you be able to have people on your team that you shouldn't be able to queue with? So for an example, if I'm GM1 and I'm top 500, and I like, should I be able to get a GM5 in my team, or like, because let's say
I don't like this question at all.
Group up with SK and I can't group up with SK because SK's GM5, or I'm GM5.
I know what Jay's doing here. Jay is gonna, you can kind of argue at that point, like, I can't even queue with these people, right? Why am I playing with them? Well, why can't I just queue with more people then? Like it's an opening bait.
Then, like, we solo queue and then SK's on my team, like should that be allowed to happen?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So it's super unintuitive, right? You would expect like, okay, if we're restricting groups to this amount, why are we making matches wider than that amount, right? It's weird. So let me use an example of like at gold level, because gold is, I think, actually gold is more egregious in this sense. So at like anywhere below diamond, right, or diamond or below, you're able to group 2 ranks apart, right? So a diamond can group with a gold. Let's say you have a 3 stack that's like a diamond to a gold level 3 stack, and let's say you have another 3 stack that's like, high platinum to high silver or something like that. So like, maybe you've got these 2 parties, and maybe they're like this, where the middle two players match each other really well, but the bottom 2 players are wider. In that case, that's actually a set of parties that we probably want to put against each other, because one, they're both 3 stacks. They're both wide parties, and we want to kind of put wide parties together, because the alternative, right, is putting each of those 3 stacks that are wide 3 stacks against solos or something, right? And that means more solos are getting in matches that are wide, and we obviously want to minimize that as much as possible. So in that case, even though the bounds get expanded beyond, 2 ranks, it's probably better.
I do think it's quite ironic, though, that he is explaining stacking to top 500 streamers who literally can't stack because we're not allowed by the game client. I just think it's kind of funny.
For the system overall, for us to put those 2 parties against each other. And so that's kind of a lot of the problem. Like a lot of where the really, really wide matches come from is usually us trying to put parties together. Because ultimately, like,
he's not answering
if you're
Jay's question
solo,
though.
We want to give you as many solo matches as possible, like matches with all solos, because those are going to be the best matches. So ultimately, and then I guess at Grandmaster level, it's So it's funny, you know, like what I was saying, like, you know, 1% of the time you get like a diamond in your GM1 match. That is way worse at gold. That bound. Like if you look at the spread of MMRs, the GM players actually have it better than anybody else because of the extreme grouping restrictions. Yeah, you wouldn't expect this. It's kind of unintuitive, but at gold, it's much wider. Like the
I don't know what he means by wider.
average GM match is a narrower band of skill than the average gold match.
In fairness to GMs, though, you know, a lot of the time they're going to feel it more. They're going to notice the mistakes.
Yeah, but
the gold player might not necessarily notice the mistakes that someone's making that makes them silver, you know, but they might.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because every time I try to compare like between like groups is like a diamond player. No offense to diamond players, but a diamond player and a GM lobby, there's a huge like, you know, skill gap.
You can really tell.
Yeah, you can really tell. So it's about that makes.
Dude, I can tell you when someone's a fresh GM, like they're GM, right? They got to GM. I go, yep, that dude's new. I smell it, and I'm like 95% of the time right. So like, I understand what they're saying, but like, one, we're also talking about not top 500 GM stuff, so like, fair, I guess. But to the same point, though, I'm sure they have data that like they're working off of there. But in my own personal experience, where we're looking at most of the medal ranks, high plat and high gold ain't that big of a difference, except like the plat player kind of has like a little bit better mechanical skill. Like honestly, all the medal ranks, like most of the medal ranks, I feel like you're just mostly mechanical skill. Like you don't actually get any teamwork or team play or any kind of ideas until you hit to like diamond. Everything up to that, like you could basically have someone walk in a straight line and just start. If you could hit shots, like let's just say you're some Valorant god who doesn't miss, and just stand, hold W key on cast and just walk at them. More times than not, you probably are going to be dropping people until you get to that high plat diamond range, and then you'd probably get in a little bit of trouble. So I understand what they're saying, but here's the caveat: is they also don't take into effect fun. Those medal rank players, yeah, their quality of their matches might be worse when they're stacking, but they get to stack. So we don't. So we're just told, no, the grass is greener over here, I promise. It's like, okay.
Makes a lot more
Believe
sense.
you, I guess.
Would you like me to go again, or?
Oh wait, I got this one. But
Right.
how much of the recent plat and GM lobby is decay or like new accounts versus actual real plats?
Yeah. So back to that apology.
This is never going to get a good answer.
It's mostly decay, but it has happened. We know it's happened. We've seen it happen in some games, some of our own games. But when I say mostly decay, to break that down, here's why it is mostly decay. So let's say we have a GM player from Overwatch 1, and you know
I know what he's going to say, and he's right. But there's another problem here.
They didn't play in season 1 or season 2, right? Like they skipped that, and they appear in season 3, which is actually very plausible because we have like millions of players, right? They would have. I don't know if you guys, you know, I'm sure Jay and SK, you know, you saw your initial ranks when you logged in, but if you've watched all your favorite streamers, like when they first logged into Overwatch 1, they were very decayed down to a lower rank in that first moment, and so that's still true of those players returning today. So like if they're coming back in season 3, or they barely played season 1 or 2, if they played like 10 games in season 1 or 2, that was not enough for their ranks to converge, for their MMR and their SR to converge. So they still look very low. And that's where most of these cases I've investigated are that, but not all of them. So again, apologies for that.
So here's the problem. Gavin's right. He's very smart, very right. But there's a problem here. There's a big problem that's being overlooked. The problem here that's getting overlooked is because MMR decay doesn't exist really, and they say it exists, but if it does, it's very light to the point where it's useless. What they're saying is that that person is still GM, right? But it looks like they're diamond or plat because they haven't played really much since the game came out. It just, they decayed down with the season 1 reset, season 2, season 3. But here's the problem though. Yeah, they decayed down, but they also haven't played the game. If they've decayed that far down, are they still GM level caliber players? I think that's a really hard question to answer, because there are going to be some players that are just playing on an alt account, right? Like if you are someone who plays Overwatch every single day in your top 500, and then you don't feel like playing on your main account, and so you hop on this alt account that you've had since season 12, and you haven't really played since Overwatch 1, and it looks like you're a plat player, right? You look like a plat player on your rank, but in the background, you're actually a top 500 player who's just playing on a different account, right? It's a good job of not putting them in, say, Diamond or Masters games, and it keeps them in the GM lobbies. But on the flip side, you have players that they really haven't been playing much. They've just been coasting. They come on like once every 2 weeks, play 2 games, and hop off. Those players are not GM anymore. It is not possible to take a break from Overwatch for multiple months, come back and pick up the game and go immediately be good, you know? Like, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Jay goes into that, actually. I hope he does.
Yeah,
That makes
hopefully in season 4, you know, it'll be easier. Like, everybody's ranks will be their actual rating at that point. And so, you know, at that point, once you see these problems, then you can be sure that it's actually, you know, really wide matches. So hopefully it gets, you know, the problem looks a lot better in season 4.
I think in season 4 as well, you guys said there's not going to be any MMR decay at the beginning of the season, right?
That is true.
SR decay, right?
SR decay, yes.
MMR decay is not going away, so that means if you don't play Overwatch for a year, you will decay.
Okay, I hate to say it. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I love Gavin. Like, he's a cool dude. But they even say SR decay. Nobody says skill rating decay. Everyone says SR. Like, skill tier division. I said skill rating. I'm losing it. Skill tier division, STD decay. Nobody says it. Everyone says SR. Everyone still goes off the Overwatch 1 system. Like, think about that. Like, even when the devs talk about it, they're talking about the old system because it's so much easier to talk about it. It makes more sense. So, like, you're not talking about your skill tier divisions decaying. Like, and that's why he says SR. Like, it's the first thing you think of, right? I don't know.
MMR decay at the beginning of the season, right?
That is true.
SR decay, right?
SR decay, yes.
MMR decay is not going away, so that means if you don't play Overwatch for a year, you will decay.
Okay.
But SR decay going away.
Okay.
We have no idea what that number is like, by the way.
The SR decay was much more aggressive, like, you know, because we were trying to like move you down so that you could like go back up through the season. MMR decay is much more like, you know, we've got models of how, you know, if you don't play Overwatch for a year, we kind of have a sense of like how far down, and that's also like, you know, how we increase our uncertainty about you.
They told you MMR decay is real. If they literally just said, if you guys don't play for a year and you guys come back to the game,
you must be talking to chat.
Oh yeah, because they're.
I want to see what he says, because chat's like, what do you mean? They've never said how it works, though.
They don't understand the concept that if I don't play Overwatch for a year and I come back to the game, I still should be a top 500 player. I'm not. If I take a year off, I'm gonna be trash.
Right.
Like chat.
You'll be bronze, but like you'll be lower. You know?
Yeah.
Lower is like low GM though.
You guys are that dumb.
No, sorry. Basically, if someone gets to rank 1, they're like 4,700 or whatever, the highest. Wouldn't that, if SR decay is gone?
The reason why I don't buy this, I'm gonna just be honest with you. The reason I don't buy this is Seagull. Okay, a month ago, Tim the Tatman came to play Overwatch. Seagull couldn't play with us. He didn't have an account. He hopped on accounts that he had from season like 4, 5, 6, 7 that were rank 1, like way back in the day, and those accounts were still too high to play with Tim. From the original 1 through 9 seasons, like we're talking before break, those accounts still hadn't decayed enough to the point where we could play with Tim. You know what Tim was? Tim was like plat, gold-ish range. I think his tank was like plat, and his like other stuff was like a little bit lower, so I could play support with him like on like tank. He still couldn't play with us. So how aggressive is the MMR decay? I don't think it's seriously enough. I think it's dumb. They may not mention there's a floor to the decay. There's a floor? Is that confirmed, or you just pulled that from somewhere?
Between seasons, wouldn't that mean there's a lot less like really high ranked players playing because they won't need to play as much in the next seasons going on because they're always just at that
just an
super
idea.
high rank?
Yeah, we've been talking about this. You know, I guess you're kind of thinking about like leaderboard camping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the 20.
So, sorry to say really fast. I hope if they talk about stacking, I'm going to go bananas because there's a guy right now who is like rank 3 for a while. He might have fallen a little bit. He has 25 games played and is rank 3. Not even with you. So, like, they talk about wanting to play more and keep the ladder competitive, but there's a guy with 25 games at rank 3. So, like, I don't know.
25 games to appear there is still there.
I'm mad at you,
We're
chat.
changing it to 25
You guys are
wins,
Papega.
actually.
25 wins. Thank you, Morgan.
So
Sorry.
we are gonna make it, take more time to get on the leaderboard.
50-ish
Right.
games.
Oh, they're gonna make it to
for each
50.
account you want to camp the leaderboard with, you'll need to play, a decent amount of games.
Oh, they're gonna change it.
And that does give
Interesting.
your, MMR a chance to change again. Like if you're gonna need to win quite a lot, right? So
That's a good change. I like that. Okay.
That is also something I think that we're just a little bit, we're gonna kind of wait and see. And if it turns out to be a problem, you can definitely expect us to be, figuring out some sort of solution for that.
Damn, 25 wins
For
on
sure.
each roll is gonna be
Awesome.
crazy.
So
I mean,
my
50
next question
sorry,
is
50
gonna
wins
be,
on each roll.
because there's
Or
been
50
a lot
games
of talk
played.
about this recently, and a lot of people have been especially when I look at profiles. So do you guys believe in like this rank inflation that's been going around, being tossed around? Like, how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, so there's actually a couple things going on, and I'm sorry, actually, if we had realized how visible some of the effects of these things would be, we would have probably messaged this out more, because we don't want to keep players in the dark. In season 3, we fixed a bug where we realized we were actually being too harsh. Like, everybody's ranks were lower than what they should have been, even if you play a lot of matches. Kind of like, you can think of it as like the entire population was shifted down.
In what season? Sorry.
In season 3. So at the beginning of season 3,
we fixed it.
Okay.
Because in 1 and 2 it was deflated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, basically what we realized was like, the people who were supposed to be like, Diamond 1 were actually like Diamond 3 or something like that. So we pushed everybody up a little bit.
Is that before the reset?
Hit, like, the target that we had.
I'm guessing they mean MMR.
But yeah, like I said, we didn't realize how significant that would look. So sorry about that. There's a second thing which is actually still a bug, but that's going to be fixed in season 4. And that does cause a little bit of inflation at the very high end.
Oh no.
So probably there's like slightly more GM1s than there should be. Like, people who are like GM2 are actually, some people are in GM1. That's kind of like this weird side effect of how the rank update system works. Like, because right now, we like decay your rank and then you kind of like move up. And so it's kind of this, it's a weird side effect of like how your rank moves up towards your rating, that like once you get close to your rating, you have like a...
The reason there is a bit of a problem right now in top 500 right now, where you can be GM1 and not top 500, and you have no clue how many more games you need to win to hit top 500, and it's a little bit annoying.
A little bit of wiggle room. So like if you go on a win streak, you kind of like, you're actually above your rating. So you get a little bit inflated. That'll all go away in season 4, because, we're just going to be like, here's your rating. Your rank is, the equivalent of your rating. So yeah, sorry about that too. We actually didn't catch that until more recently. But yeah, hopefully things will feel a lot saner in season 4.
Oh, you guys are fine. You don't have to keep saying sorry. You're good.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I feel bad when we find bugs like that, because I know the community really cares about exactly what rank they are and stuff like that. So we want it to feel as stable as possible.
Some care all too much.
Yeah.
That's you, chat.
True. I have a follow-up that I might be like out of line, so if it is, don't answer it. But like, Do you think the standard for GM now is a bit lower than it was in Overwatch 1 because of this rank shift?
It feels very like Twitter-y.
That's an interesting question. So another thing that I don't think we've talked about yet is
Standard for GM lower.
Because like GM is based on your rating. When Overwatch 2 came out, we welcomed a whole lot of new players to the game. The total population grew. And as a result, we actually have a lot more GMs now than we did in Overwatch 1, strictly as a result of larger population. Because
Right.
GM is like a small percentage of the very top of players, but it is a percentage, right? So, or at least, it ends up being a percentage based on how it.
Those
how
aren't
the
new
system
players
works.
though. Those are old players
So,
that have
there
been
are
pushed in.
more GMs now.
Because like it's still off of a curve. Like because the game became much bigger, the curve, the water rises together, right? So like the reason why in Overwatch 1 there was only a certain amount of players that were there is because like the game was kind of dead and there was like nobody new coming up through the ranks because there wasn't anyone new really playing. It was all the same people. So like the water rises together as there's like more people, but the new players aren't in. It's like Overwatch 1 players who got pushed up.
I don't know if I can really say. Maybe Gavin has more of an opinion. I don't think I really have a strong opinion on whether they're deserved or not, though, because ultimately it's all going to be a little relative, right? Because it's relative to the population.
Well, I mean, that's super complicated, right? Because Overwatch 2 is not Overwatch 1. What it took to be good at Overwatch 1 is not the same skill set that it took to be good at Overwatch 2.
Point.
There are people that are great shooter players that are doing better in Overwatch 2 because they don't have to play the same double shield lineup and stuff like that. So like it's just apples to oranges in a lot of ways. And so like some people are going to rise to GM that were, like hardstuck masters before, and then there's also the fact that, like Morgan said, it's a percentage. So we're capturing a percentage, and if you capture a percentage of a bigger number, that's more people. So complex.
Yeah,
That's really
top
cool.
500 will always be 500 though.
True.
Right.
I always wanted to ask, like, I don't think you guys can answer it, but everyone used to say, oh, the GM used to be like the top 1% of the game, but I don't like who knows if it's still the top 1%. But like you guys said, like more people are going to be able to, it's a different type of shooter.
No, it's still be the top 1%.
It's one less tank. It's a different game.
Like if you have 100 people and then you expand it to 1,000.
I want to address Jay. They said, how is it a different game, but the MMR is the same? Great question. That's why we applied so much uncertainty to the MMR going into Overwatch 2. That's why when we have a system of uncertainty that lets us say, do we really believe in this rating? And when we switched over, we said we believe a lot less in everybody's rating. So we use them as a starting point, but we really quickly changed what we felt about a lot of players.
Okay.
That's really cool.
Do I like one less tank?
If you see any interesting questions in either or,
I think one tank was absolutely needed. They genuinely just couldn't figure out how to do two tanks, so it was needed.
Just feel free to answer it.
Yep.
You
can take the next one, Jay.
I'll take the next one. So I have a very interesting one. And this is probably going to be a hot topic. What do you guys have to... Oh, sorry, let me read it. What do you say about the people who want shorter queue times versus the people who want more balanced games?
Oh, wait. That's, you skipped 3 questions.
Oh, yeah, but...
Oh, no.
Oh,
sorry,
I thought these were mine, so I like the ones I.
Sorry,
I was gonna. What do you guys want?
We're covering it up. We're covering it up.
This is the question I thought of, and I thought I was gonna read all mine first.
Oh wait, I got it back. Wait, but we haven't asked these 3 that I just highlighted.
Do you want me to read it? I can read it.
One of them before them is like the one you asked is like a follow up to the one before it, so it's like.
Oh.
Sorry.
We have questions, chat.
Yeah.
I have my questions I wanted to ask. Okay, I could read.
Sorry,
no, you're fine. You're fine. I guess
this is scuffed.
The next one.
This one, but you can ask that one, and we can skip the one before because it's kind of already been answered.
The suspense is killing me. What are they gonna ask?
It could be anything, Morgan.
Yeah.
You sure you want me to skip it?
You don't
just ask it.
Don't skip it. Just ask it. Let's go.
Is there going to be a fix for the inflated numbers going on? For an example, the people who have been gold for 6 seasons in Overwatch 1 and still gold for Overwatch 2 Season 1 and 2, but now magically Masters or GM 5 now in Season 3.
Yeah, so I think we already talked about the causes. I have not seen anybody who was gold and went to GM. That sounds a little bit.
I said Masters, but
a little bit ridiculous. if somebody has an actual example of that, I'd be interested to look. Because like from my perspective, this should be like very small. This is like a couple divisions. This shouldn't be like several ranks. So I would assume that, maybe they were playing other shooters and got a lot better, or
I know what he's saying.
something.
I have seen people post the screenshots, but I haven't seen exactly what he said. Like I see like season 36 Overwatch 1 gold, season 3 Overwatch 2 masters, right? Like there's a lot of time in between those, that's a lot of
Yeah, I
time.
don't really have I have no idea for how our system could do anything like that.
Yeah, to just summarize, GM inflation, kind of real. Other inflation, not inflation. It's actually
Yeah,
was
yeah.
deflation.
Yeah, anybody who's below like GM3 isn't really inflated, at least based on the based on our current ranks. If we look in aggregate.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, next one.
Nothing above G.
How many people are Grandmaster 1? Is it even feasible to have frequent matches where everyone is GM1 and not playing with the same people over and over again?
Yeah, so
No, it's not possible.
I can't tell you the exact number, but I can tell you it's a fair bit lower than 1% is Grandmaster, and GM1 is like a very tiny fraction of a percent. It's like very, 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 very negligible. It's a very elite group of players, right? And because of that,
You heard that,
ultimately,
chat?
it's extremely hard to ensure that we can match only GM1s because, like, a lot of the time there's just not that many of them online.
Right.
Ultimately, we could
Yeah, that's the key.
we could eventually get to a point maybe where like we know that a GM match is about to finish, and so maybe we like hold some players in queue. We could get a lot smarter about that kind of thing.
Oh, that's I never even thought about that.
Oh yeah, there's like so many tricks we could, but
Wow.
but anyways, the at the end of the day, like there's going to be a lot of times of day when like there's just not actually enough GMs online that like ping well to the same data center.
True.
Right.
That it's really, really hard to kind of ensure that. We do make matches, there's like
The time of day is a
a
big thing.
smallish percent of matches, maybe 10 or 20% of GM1 matches that like actually have pretty much all GM1s in it. It's just super, super rare. I wish we could make it higher, and I hope we can.
Gotcha. Everyone should just never get off the game so we can all have good matches.
True. I can ask this
Sounds terrible.
original one, right? Or you want me to ask this one first?
Wait, can I?
Go ahead. Go
I'll
ahead.
just ask this one, and then the next one's like
It
the
basically
follow-up.
follows it up, yeah.
So, what's the team's philosophy around wait time versus even matchups?
Oh, that's a good
an
one.
interesting one.
That's a good one.
I think I'll want to hear Gavin's opinion.
That's
on
like
this
my
too,
favorite question so far.
So from the engineering side, I mean, ultimately, like we want kind of both, right? Like we want good matches and we want short queue times. And I think
It's not possible though.
I would imagine most people kind of want that.
Well, it depends. It's like two
ultimately
knobs.
like it's kind of a complicated trade-off because like I can't just make it like if I make everybody wait in queue for like an additional 30 seconds, we'll get like a little bit of match quality. But I can't just keep doing that forever.
Yep.
Actually, last night we probably made queue times a little bit too fast. We did some config changes yesterday, and I think we made queue times too fast, which is mostly an issue for parties, for groups, not for solos. Solos can generally have very fast queue times, and there's really not like a whole lot of benefit that we get from holding solos in queue for longer. For parties, it's nice because then we get to cluster parties better together. So ultimately, making parties wait a little bit longer for kind of like a match that's both better for them and also like healthier for the system as a whole is very important. But and like at GM, their queue times are a little bit more proportional to match quality because like like I was saying, if we like make everybody wait longer, we can potentially get enough like GM1s to make a GM1 match. But for the most part, it's
I
actually
don't really
very
want to wait
it's like not
hours.
straightforward. Like you know somebody asked for like a slider, right, of like, you know, match quality to like queue times, and it's like it actually doesn't exactly work, because like if you're queuing as like a solo player, like your match quality is really not dependent on your queue time. It's mostly dependent on kind of like everybody else's queue times and like what the system as a whole is doing. And so it's tricky. Ultimately, I think we can make better matches without making queue times worse. That's mostly like making the matchmaker more sophisticated.
It's
And
interesting.
also being able to make an informed decision about like, we know that if we wait for a few more minutes, we can make a better match for this player. Right now we don't do that. We're not sophisticated enough. We're kind of like implicitly making that decision, but we don't have like a really intentional decision-making process behind that. Like if we knew that we could hold this GM1 player in queue for another 5 minutes and make them a better match, I would absolutely do that. But right now we just don't have that like foresight. So
So here's the thing. Here's the elephant in the room. People think that there's just these perfect matches. Everyone wants the perfect game. They're like, oh, I want all my teammates to be the starting 4 all-stars for Overwatch League. And the other team, come, you know, and it's like, there's this idea that you're going to get a perfect game, and you don't. Like, there's a big difference between waiting 15 minutes to lose a 3-minute push game and waiting 2 minutes to lose a 3-minute push game. And I'll tell you what right now, waiting 2 minutes to lose a 3-minute push game and then 2 minutes for another game is a lot better than 15 minutes to lose a 3-minute push game and then wait another 15 minutes for a game. I would much rather have faster queues than really long, perfect matches, because you never really know. You think you're going to get some perfect game. Dude, I'll load into a game and I got some asshat who's like, oh, I have streamers on my team, GG. Or they load in and they're high as a kite and they're like, dude, we got to play Havana? Oh, I wanted to play Genji. And we have a Hanzo and a Genji player on Havana versus a Widow and Sojourn / Ashe Mercy comp. And you just sit there and you lose. And it's like, you know, like, unless the matchmaker's so sophisticated, and it's like, okay, this next game's going to be Havana. Let's make sure both teams get a Widowmaker player. It's not going to happen. Like, it's fantasy. It's literally La La Land. Like, it's just bull. So, I understand wanting to have quality matches, like have everyone be like GM or Masters getting into a game. But if I'm waiting 5+ minutes for a game, I ain't having a good time. It's already going downhill pretty fast. Making people wait a long time for a match is just not the way to go.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of stuff that we'll be working on in the future. But ultimately, it'll be hard.
I can't imagine that being easy to do. Holding like
no,
a specific person.
That's kind of tricky.
Yeah, I can't imagine it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a design standpoint, you know, we want what Morgan said at the start. We want to have our cake and eat it. We want both of those things, match quality and fast match times, right? But like, I think that what we hear from the community mostly, and this is a nuanced answer, because like mostly we hear people would rather wait in queue longer for better matches, but a lot of the time that's coming from competitive.
But it's not real. It's bullshit. Like, it's this idea that you're gonna get a perfect game. No, you're not. It's dumb. It's so dumb. And you have to also realize it's coming from Overwatch 1 players. Overwatch 1 players were the same losers who sat at their desks for 15 minutes to play double shields. Dude, why are you listening to them? They don't know what the they want. They don't have a clue. They don't want to play with new players. They want it to be elitist. They don't want to play with Lil Jimmy, who just climbed to GM. They don't want to play with him. I get him in my game, and I think it's funny. And I go, well, yeah, he's new to GM. Yeah, that's a new play. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's a fresh GM. Yeah, I can smell that. But it's like, those aren't the competitive players don't want to even... They're like, Jimmy, dude. Throw him back to the streets, bro. I don't care. I only want Dante on Doomfist. Like I want all owl players in my games, and I want to be sweating and I want my session to finish, and I'm glued to my desk going, like, it's like, bro, I understand what fantasy land you want. Probably also want a girlfriend, but let's be real with ourselves here, man. I'm sorry. Don't be mean to little Jimmy. At least little Jimmy gets you another game kind of fast. Come on.
Players that, so like different queues have different requirements. We hear a lot of, over season 3, since we made these foundational changes to matchmaking, we've heard a ton of feedback from people that play in wide parties.
Well, thanks for the gift and sub to Jimmy.
We've seen matchmaking in season 3, but wide parties are a thing too. In quick play, we have bronze players queuing with Grandmaster players sometimes. That's a thing. And then we have to put them in a game, right? So like those queue times were really bad in season 3. And so like we got a lot of complaints from parties like that said, why am I waiting so long? Why am I in queue for 15 minutes? The reason is because
the game dies. It dies. That's what happens. Most 95% of players outside of our there's 3 bubbles here, okay? There's the super competitive elite top 500 GM. Everyone knows each other. We only, like everyone has int lists. They only like certain players. Like you have that elite bubble. Then you have the competitive like Overwatch bubble, which is like they watch Overwatch League or they watch streamers, or like they're super into Overwatch and like they know every streamer by name. They know where they live. They know every Overwatch League player's history. That like you got those 2, and then the big one up top is the last elite group, which is it's a little bit bigger. It's the players that think they're a part of the other 2 groups, but they're not. But they want to be a part of those groups, and they want to be a GM, or they want to be super into Overwatch, so they like casually watch, but they also don't casually watch. They always try to like watch some unranked to GMs or some stuff, because like they're like, one day I want to get in those games and I want to be that person. And then there's us, and then there's the rest of the fucking room. So those little small bubbles, and then there's the rest of the room, which is all the casual players. Anonymous, thanks for gifting us sub. Jimmy sucks. The casual players in the rest of the room don't give a fuck. They don't care about our little elite groups. They don't care. They want fast queues. They want to play with their friends. They want to feel like they have an impact. They think Moira's OP. They think Cassidy Grenade is the most bullshit thing ever in existence. They all love Mercy, or they hate Mercy, and they all think Reinhardt is the best tank in the game. They think Winston is meta in Overwatch League still since Season 1, because that was the only time they watched. And when the game first released, and the Overwatch League Grand Finals when the game came out, and they were like, oh, that must be the best tank in the game. They still think it's the best tank. They go to TikTok, and they comment on the weirdest things that come by their feed, and they have like the Mercy, here come the Hurricane. Those are that's the 95% of the game. And they don't care. They don't want a 15-minute game. They don't want it. That's the stuff that kills it over time.
Party is weird,
I understand if they have a GM and a bronze playing quick play, it's a little tougher. But it's such strict matchmaking, and they try to make everything so perfect.
I was just gonna go into like,
and people want it so perfect.
The next question is,
just,
what do you say?
We're never gonna
win.
win.
Who want a shorter queue time versus the people who want, longer queue times for the games to be more balanced. So,
and I also think it's really ironic that every DPS player, all the DPS streamers, and I hate to say it, all the DPS streamers, creators, players, they all say they want quality games over queue times. Y'all mofos in Overwatch 1 were screaming about 10-minute queues and how annoying it was, and we're trying to find tank players to play with, but now you got fast queues, and now you want quality games. You're like, no, we already got the fast queues, now we want quality games. We lost a damn tank in this game just so you guys wouldn't kill the game off with your 10-minute long queues. DPS players make up the #1 largest player pool in this game, followed by supports, followed by tanks. And we literally removed a tank, not only to keep the quality of the speed going, but also because the queue times were so long for DPS players that they literally quit the game. And so we went from what Overwatch 1 boasted like 40 million players or something to the end where like we could have Twitch, with me, ML, Emong, J3, everyone who was still playing and streaming Overwatch 1, we would hit as a category at 3 o'clock in the afternoon 4,900 viewers combined as a category, like deader than dead, like just like trying to bring that bitch back to life. And it's like now everyone's like, oh, now we want quality. We don't fuck the queue times. We did this because of you.
Yeah, I guess I kind of touched on that a little bit, where it's like ultimately it's very difficult to like I said, you know, as like a solo player, if you're not in like GM, your queue time is not actually very correlated with match quality at all. It's mostly a result of like, you know, are you playing at like peak hours? Are you, you know, are there like a lot of like wide groups online? You know, there's like a lot of factors like that that kind of like dictate kind of the dynamic that the matchmaker is in right now, and like what types of matches we're making. And you know, most of the time, like if you're a solo queuing, you know, we're not actually making a match around you, we're making a match around somebody else in that match, you know, because you're only 10% of the players in that match. And so most of the time it's not you who waited a long time, it's somebody else.
Oh.
So the system fundamentally doesn't have like, you know, there's not like, I don't just have like a knob that I can be like, oh, you know, let's like increase queue times and make match quality better. It's a lot more complicated than that. And
Gavin's
ultimately,
laughing,
you
but
know, a lot of like the
he knows
match
it is
quality
kind of like
advantages
that.
come from kind of
It's more
these
complicated. It's kind of like that.
dynamics of like, you know, how
I've heard him
good
say
of an
that
average
before.
match are we making, and that kind of dictates like how long parties are waiting in queue, and it all kind of like, it kind of settles out. It's a little
Actually,
bit hard
you
to
know,
explain.
Morgan, that knob would be really useful to have. We should get Chris to test that in Jira. We need that.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need that knob, Morgan, please.
You know, I think actually, to be honest, we'll get there. Like
Wait,
in
my
like,
name's
I don't
Chris.
know, a year or two. Like the way that we're building, we'll eventually get to the point where we really do have something that's as simple as a knob, but it's just horribly complicated right now.
It's like a bunch
Sorry,
of
I'm giving
knobs.
Morgan a hard time.
No, it's all
Yeah,
good.
but from my side of this, the foundational changes we were talking about at the start of season 3, the stuff that we did that gave us some problems, also does have a good side that we haven't seen a ton of use out of yet. But like that will give us the ability to add more parameters and more nuance to the matchmaker in the future. So like there was a reason we did that, and the reason things got worse unintentionally again is we want to be able to make it smarter.
Yeah, we kind of had to break it to make it better, you know?
Right.
Didn't have to break.
Well, okay, yeah, we didn't have to.
I have a follow-up that wasn't really in the thing, so don't answer if you don't want to. But is the matchmaker the same as like same restrictions for arcade modes or competitive arcade modes? Because those queue times are really long if you play competitive arcade.
That's a good question. So probably your queue times are way worse because you're so high MMR.
Yeah.
I would guess. So
It's so
if you think about
ass.
it, every queue has some population, right? And if you're playing in competitive, you're playing in a very high population queue. And then if you go to
Right.
play in
I stopped playing arcade
even
because
though
of
those
this.
ratings aren't the same, you know, I'm imagining all of your ratings are pretty high. So when you go to play in arcade, you know, you might not just be like the best, like, you know, 1% of players or whatever. You'll be like the best 0.0001% of players at that point. Like you may actually be like the very best player queuing into, I don't know, Mystery
I
Heroes or
want
No
to
Limits or
be the very
whatever,
best.
you know,
Shut up, Jay.
small mode that you're queuing into. And so like, yeah, that's a challenge. So we do actually have like, we're running the same matchmaking architecture across all of our queues, but they're configured a little bit differently. So arcade is supposed to be faster, and for most players it is. For very, very high MMR players, the problem is it's actually the same problem as, you know, the GMs at 3 a.m. where it's like,
Yeah.
if you're actually the best player in the queue, it's really hard to make a match that is like close to you know, a 50% win chance for each team, right? And so that's the main problem. Hopefully we can do better.
Stuck in
Though.
my head too.
We're definitely working on some changes that should give us a bit more fine-tuned control over arcade.
Small fun fact for anyone who doesn't know: if you are GM plus on roll queue Overwatch, You are treated as a GM player in Arcade, Capture the Flag, Lucio Ball. Mr. Hero's ranked, luckily, it appears to went off open queue MMR, so we're pretty good there. But basically, if you are GM top 500 in Overwatch ranked role queue, you cannot play Lucio Ball as a 3-stack. Fun fact, because in Overwatch 1, we tried to play Lucio Ball, me, Jay, and Emong, one last time for old time's sake at the end of Overwatch 1, and we couldn't play together, even though we had not played a single game yet that season, because our role queue was GM+. Feels bad.
And yeah, eventually, you know, it's like, because at some point we got to just make a match, right? Especially in Arcade.
A 3v3 game mode.
Yeah,
also 4v4 ranks, same thing.
Better, over the next couple patches.
Sweet, that's so cool.
Still your turn, because you had a follow-up.
You can take this one, and then I'll take, unless you want to do, I'll just go. Okay, sorry.
It doesn't matter.
Is it possible to have perfect matchmaking where every game is close?
That is a beautiful question.
No, the answer is very easily no.
It's actually my
Gavin's laughing.
Question.
It's not possible.
I'll
tell you why it's no. Actually. The answer is no is because you can't account for everything. Somebody's sleepy. Somebody's tired. Somebody's having an off day. They had a bad day at work. They're fucking distracted. The fucking doorbell dingus. They got food delivered. Like, open up! It's like, dude, leave it at the door. Like, dude, there's a million things going on. You can never account for all that.
So there's kind of like two pieces to this. One is like, can we make matches that look perfect on paper?
So,
and can we like?
I just want to say, by the way, they're both pulling questions from that, like the community gave to them from like Twitter, their own communities, whatever. These aren't just their questions. So if they're sometimes dumb, like that's not Jay or SK asking a dumb question. They're asking a question their community wanted them to ask on their behalf. And that is why it's like sometimes a little bit like, oh, I don't know about
that. Sure that all of the matches look perfect on paper. What I mean by that, nobody uses paper anymore, right? What I mean by that is like going into the match, the matchmaker will make a match and it'll have, you know, the players.
Yes, it's possible. Halo 3 did it. And, Halo 3's dog.
You know, going into that match, does the matchmaker predict?
Jay, you're batting zero.
Does this look like a good match? You know, it's like all the ratings are really tight, all of that kind of stuff. That's the first part of the question. Second part is what actually happens. You know, when the match actually gets played, how fair does it feel?
I love Jay, but my God.
And then I guess maybe like a third part would be like, how do we actually build something that gets as close as possible to the optimal? Yeah, I get to just nerd out on this one. This is like a TED Talk for me. So that first question. So, how do we make matches that look good on paper? So right now, believe it or not, about 30% of the time when we make a match, it looks utterly perfect going into the match. Like all 10 players are like the exact same rating. That's like a 1 in 3 chance. So if you like roll a dice and it's a 5 or a 6.
He's talking about like most ranks match. Or GM?
The matchmaker thinks so, anyways.
I think he's talking most ranks other than GM.
And then about the next half of our matches are, I would say, pretty good. And like Roll Delta was really trying to make these matches better because like
is it all matches?
If we're making a match where like literally everybody's rating is exactly the same, there's nothing better you can do, right? From the matchmaker's perspective. I'll get to what it actually ends up in a minute because I'm sure Chad is. I don't know. Well, I shouldn't speculate.
Don't look, Morgan. Don't look.
So those 50% of matches, generally we can ensure that they look fair, which is that like both teams are relatively balanced. Like there's no like dramatically better players on one team than the other or anything like that. And also, with the postseason 3, that was when we made the Roll Delta changes that make it so that even though those matches are going to be a little bit wider, like they're going to have a wider skill distribution, they'll still end up having relatively matched roles. So that's like most of our matches, I would say, are either perfect or decent. And then there's like the 1/6 of matches that do not look great. And mostly those matches are the result of we're making a match around a really wide party, or we're making a match at 3
So
a.m.
groups, or yep, 3 a.m.
And I say 3 a.m., but that's also like, like we have like smaller regions like Australia, for example, where like
True.
their concurrency is just lower, right? And they're more isolated too. So it's like a lot harder for us to find good matches for them a lot of the time. So that's the matchmaker's view. Ultimately, we can make that a fair bit better. And most of the advantages that we'll get going forward, like we already kind of know what makes a match look good on paper, right? I mean, obviously, you just make all the ratings the same, right? Mostly the advantages or like the benefits that we can get from the matchmaker going forward are around being a lot smarter about, like, I could make this good match, but I don't want to, because if I make this match, I prevent myself from making these other good matches. And what I mean by that is, like, you can imagine a case where, like, say there's like 9 GM1s in queue and 9 GM5s in queue, and then a GM3 shows up. Intuitively, we should absolutely make the GM1 match with that GM3, because there's so many less GM1s. But we're not super intentional about that. And that's just one example. There's kind of like, there's a handful of different ways you can express this fundamental type of problem where, like, fundamentally what you want is a system that can kind of say, like, I could make this match, but what are these other potential matches I could make? And you actually need to project in the future and say, like, how many players do I expect to, show up in the next few minutes, and kind of like piece together, like, I really want to make
This is so
a
interesting.
good GM1 match. Let me not accidentally pull some of these, middle GM players into a lower match or something like that. And that's where
I don't
a
mind
lot
the
of
spam. But if you
gains
guys
could
one
come
man
from
spam, I'm just gonna time you guys out, and then
like
you guys
on
will
the
just be like,
matchmaking
not
side.
here.
But that
Or
is
Jay.
only going into the match. What ends up happening in the match is a lot more chaotic, because I'm sure most people would not say that a third of their matches feel perfect, right? Certainly a third of my matches don't feel perfect. In fact, actually, over the weekend, I was playing some comp, and I played a match that we like full held on point A, and then immediately took, it was like Midtown. We immediately took, and I looked at the match, and it was actually one of these perfect matches, and I'm like, well, that didn't feel good. Like,
Wait, did he say his match?
So
Wait a minute.
like over the weekend, I was playing some comp, and I played a match that we like full held on point A, and then immediately took, it was like Midtown. We immediately took. And I looked at the match, and it was actually one of these perfect matches, and I'm like, well,
wait, so he played in a game and then went back to go look at it on the back end to see if his match had some in it, or dude, that is like peak dev behavior. That is awesome. That's the best thing I've heard.
Feel good, like, and so then I'm like questioning, like, what, what's actually, where I'm still trying to figure out what happened in that match. I think maybe somebody was just not playing very well or something like that. And then that same night, actually, I was playing a match that didn't look very good on paper, but it was like one of the closest matches I've played in my life. So ultimately, like, what ends up making a match feel good in practice is a little bit nebulous. And
I'll tell you what I think it is, and they can't do it with Matchmaker. It depends on hero choices, and that can be affected by if you have a one trick on your team. Let's say you have a Sim one trick and you have to play Havana. GG, game over. Nothing you're doing about that. If you have one team has a Widow player and the other team has a Sim one trick, it's good night. It's basically see you next game. Unless something drastic happens with like the tanks or something like that, right? It can't account for what people play, what maps those things are playing on, and meta. It can't account for those. So let's say you get some King's Row, and let's pretend Ryan is still good on King's Row. Let's say you get King's Row, and you got one team's got a Reinhardt player, and the other team has got, let's say, a Diva player. And you got a Diva player versus a Ryan player on King's Row. And they're rated the same. One of two things is going to happen. the D.Va player is going to try to play against the Rein player on D.Va, not have a good time. Or what actually ends up happening is they go Rein versus the Rein player, and they don't play Rein that often versus an experienced Rein player, and they get walked. That can happen on any role, support, DPS, or tank. It's most noticeable in tank, but that's something that the matchmaker can never account for. And let's say somebody wakes up and they're like a Hanzo player. They wake up tomorrow morning and they're like, you know what? I want to play some Tracer. Matchmaker can't account for that.
For example, actually June, our data scientist or our data analyst, is working on this too. If we look at just matches that look completely perfect from the matchmaker's perspective, still something like 15% of them end in stomps. Depends on exactly how you measure, but something like 1 in 5, 1 in 6 look totally stompy in the result. And it's like, ultimately at that point, some of it could be like uncalibrated ratings, like if a new player comes in and we think there's some rating but they're actually not. There's a lot more that we can do on the rating side to be more fancy about like how we assess players coming into the system. But ultimately, I think some of it's just that Overwatch can be kind of a stompy game, right? Sometimes you get like momentum or somebody gets tilted and like, even
True.
if that match looked like it was going to be perfect, if somebody tilts a minute in, like there's nothing you can do, right? Like that match, the matchmaker
True.
couldn't have solved that problem, right? So, making like, I see a pretty clear path to like making much better matches on paper. I think we can keep making that better for a really, really long time. We can make meaningful progress kind of maybe forever, who knows. Figuring out exactly what makes a match that is like good in practice and not bad in practice, like when it's actually being played, that's like a much more open-ended problem, and that's something that we're probably going we're going to be studying that for a long time, doing actual science really about like what makes an Overwatch match feel good. So yeah, I think I've probably talked enough. Gavin,
Yeah, that problem you just
You're
described,
good.
that's more my problem than Morgan's problem, right? Like that's like more on the design side. Maybe it's more on the hero design side, which isn't me specifically, but like there are design questions there that need to be solved. I think the original question one is every match going to be good? The answer is no. Morgan took a long time to say it, but no. At 3
It
a.m.
was really
GM
interesting
games
though.
are going to be bad. They just are because there are not enough of them. Like
Real.
so, but that's kind of cheaty to say as well because like obviously those matches weren't going to be good. We think Morgan has a ton of ideas, and we actually on the design side have ideas too that we've already said some of them that can make the matchmaker smarter, and that's where we just need to keep making them better.
Okay, yeah, I was about to say, you said something about like 15% of the games were like stomps. I was going to say, do you actually see how many percentage of the games were actually like rolls?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we're not looking at the replays, right? We're just measuring statistics about the game. And so it's a little bit nebulous. Like sometimes a game can feel like a stomp, but like in my experience when playing, there's really multiple types of stomps, right? Like there's stomps where like, okay, we literally had no hope. I don't see how we could have possibly won this match.
I get that
And
a
then
lot.
there's the stomps. Yeah, hopefully we can make those go away over time. And then there's the stomps where it's like, probably we could have actually won this match, but there was something like somebody was picking a hero or there was like some reason that like the match just wasn't going well, and like it's kind of the thing where like if you imagine like at Overwatch League level, like they play like best of fives all the time, and some of those matches look totally stompy even if they go like 3 and
Right.
2 overall. And so it's really hard to disentangle stomps that are like that, where it's like the teams are actually balanced, but there's some kind of like thing that happened from like a stomp where it's like, okay, the matchmaker clearly screwed up here. Like, these players should not be in the same instance together. I think, ultimately in the long term, we can get rid of most of that type of stomp, where like it really was actually the matchmaker's fault. And that, I'm sure we're still we've, I think, improved that over the past few months. We've been focusing on trying to improve that a lot. Um, and it's very hard to say. Like, I don't have hard numbers to show, that that's actually gotten better or not. And I'm sure.
Good explanation, though.
Probably people
I like it.
me, but I tend to feel like it's gotten a little better in my matches, but it's very anecdotal, right?
Yes.
But we're gonna
that's
keep
the key.
making that better, right? We're gonna keep studying that problem, trying to keep making that, removing those
Frequency of them
from
comes
the game,
down, which is
because they
good.
really shouldn't happen. We don't have to make those matches. That's really just like the matchmaker's not sophisticated enough to where we're able to like always know exactly what we're doing that causes that.
Yeah, just really quickly, I was thinking about what you said, like the Overwatch League example. I think Scott said this last time, and I thought it was super wise, which was, you know, one match really doesn't mean that much a lot of the time. Like if you're not playing a best of series, like you may not really know who the better team is 100% of the time.
That makes sense. You want me to continue to the next one, or is that yours?
Yeah, you got it. You got.
Oh,
Those are the next 2 are yours. You got it.
the next 3.
Sorry. Next two.
Oh, okay. So I'm just gonna ask them both at the same time. How does the system balance stacking, and would it be possible to balance it at the highest level in GM plus? And will you ever allow to GMs to stack again with friends, or like are we only gonna be limited to like duos?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So first, how do we balance stacking? So we used to really try to put like 5 stacks against 5 stacks, 4 stacks against 4 stacks. We actually kind of softened that quite a bit because one, we didn't find that stacking is actually all that. This will come as a shock to people. Stacking doesn't actually increase your chances of winning most of the time.
Really?
Like 4 stacks.
I had no idea.
At least in aggregate. I'm sure there are,
And like the
really
super high ranks, is it the same? Sorry.
well, yeah, super high ranks. That's a different thing. But at like gold, for example, stacking doesn't actually increases your chance of winning. Yeah.
Wow, I always told like people, hey, you should stack in lower ranks and take advantage of it because in GM you can't. And like as long as
it's
like,
more fun.
It's your 5 stacking as well with a bunch of friends in lower ranks. At least you guys are gonna be like using your mics instead of getting those people who leave voice chat or like throw.
That's true, and also it's probably good for like if you want to learn how to play the game. I'm sure that stacking is like keep stacking, like don't stop stacking. It's good, it's a good thing, but statistically anyways, it doesn't give you like an overwhelming advantage or anything like that. So we still try to put groups against groups. There's a lot of reasons why doing that is good, both for the match and also for the matchmaker health overall. But now we're a lot more ready to put like a 5 stack against a 3 and a 2 or something like that. Because also, if you think about that, it's much more likely that we can find an actually balanced match. Because what was happening when we were
I'm just saying, anytime I've talked about stacking, this is exactly what I've said, like without fail.
put like only 5s against 5s, you're never gonna find 2 5 stacks that are like actually closely matched. I mean, it happens, but it's very rare. Compared to kind of like if you imagine like the additional pool of potential matches that you can get from putting a 5 stack against like a 3 and a 2, because like things like roll deltas, like we can make matches that just are much more closely balanced if we relax that. So so that's how we balance stacking. As far as like at the very highest MMR, I mean, I had already talked about this a little bit, but there's a trade-off, right? If we were like, I don't have a strong philosophical stance. That's more of a design question about like, are the grouping restrictions we have in the game exactly right? Or like, should we change them? I'm the engineer. I don't make those calls. But from my perspective, there is a trade-off, right? If we relax the grouping restrictions, match quality will get worse. It's the sad truth. There's really not like we don't get anything for free there. Because ultimately, like the larger a group is, the harder it is to match because just the more constraints we have on it. There's less flexibility we have. If everybody's a solo in queue.
Let me tell you the non-PR answer. The non-PR answer is that the reason why they would get worse is because what they said earlier also still applies, that the pool of players is so small. They would love to make it so they could have GM1 players versus GM1 players all the time, but it's not possible. So you gotta get your friends to come on, huh? If our players are scrimming during the day and there's not enough people on, you're gonna get low GM players or Masters players in your games to fill it. So by allowing stacking, you take more players out of that solo duo queue pool and put them into stacking, which means that the more balanced games that they can make at that high level of GM1 becomes less because there's even less people to pull from. So the non-PR answers, we can't do it because at the highest level, games would become worse and that queue times would go up, or they would have to let stacking versus solo queue, and the solo queue players don't like it, even though, like they said, it's not that big of a difference. Yes, it can be a difference if you get 5 Overwatch League players that are playing together and they're hardcore trying their asses off, but like at that level, then where you have to start the conversation is like, do they deserve to win? Isn't that technically more balanced? Is like they're not cheating, they're playing well. You know, the only problem I would say is that not everyone is going to have the ability to play with friends. Not everyone's going to have friends to play with. So like, there's that trade-off, but it's like, that's a much more philosophical question, I feel like, at that point, than a standard one, because, you know, I mean, I think there's other things in life that could possibly even apply, even with like real sports, where, you know, if somebody's really, really good at something, but they don't have other people to play with or to practice with, and they don't want to make those friends and they don't want to join a team, you know, is it totally fair? Like, is that like, you know, like where do you draw that line? I don't know though. Point is though, if you don't want Overwatch League players just running the ladder, then put something in their contract making so that they can't stack on ladder. Boom, good to go. But point is though, this question's never gonna get a good answer because it's already hard enough for them to balance with solo queue players, and solo queue players legitimately like own this game at this point.
We
so
can match, and
the culture of stacking is already lost.
Flexed, you can imagine like, you know, we can make any match with any combination of players. We can kind of guarantee it's a much better match than if there's like this, you know, set of 4 players that must be on one team together or something like that. So, yeah, I think that's. I can hand it over to Gavin. He's probably got a nice design insight.
No, I think that's enough for that question. I think we'll see what else they ask.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's good. Yeah.
Okay, I got the next one. Should there be anything in place to stop people from playing against each other many times in a row? Like, especially in high ranks, there's times where you'll play against the same person for 5 games straight.
That's actually that's very similar to my last answer. There's trade-offs. This is pretty much only a problem that happens at GM. Like if you think about gold, there's like so many gold.
It's the same reason why you're not allowed to stack. There's
all
not
you
enough
have to
people.
do is
That's the answer.
like as long as you don't queue it like the exact same moment, the chances of you getting like, I mean, maybe you'll get like twice in a row or something like that, but like the odds of you playing the same player like more than twice in a row at gold is like, I don't actually know, but it's super small. So this is really only a problem at GM. And ultimately the downside, if we were to fix this, is that it's kind of like avoids or something where like we're just adding more ways in which we're not able to make matches, and that's ultimately going to affect match quality. So it is a trade-off. Like it's something we could do. I'm not sure whether you actually want it, or you know, like whether that's actually going to help. Right? Yeah, it's hard.
Okay, you got the next ones, Jay. There's like 3 in a row.
3 in a row. Wait, all these?
Yeah. Nope. These are the ones you made. Yeah. But I can see one if you want.
Yeah, take the first one. Take the first one, and I'll do the next 2.
Okay. Are you ever gonna bring back Group Finder for the people who do want to LFG for people to play with?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So
I do
LFG
miss
has
the
some
LFG.
social like disruptive behavior problems that we never solved. So like I don't know if you guys have seen what's happening with like custom games right now that we're trying to solve, where like I think we've mostly fixed it, but we're getting to the we've had a ton of like really disruptive titles and like game modes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so LFG didn't have any of those protections in place, basically. And we still hadn't like actually solved those problems when we did the switch from like the Overwatch 2 release date, when we decided to release PvE or PvP early. And we still haven't really solved those problems today. So when we were doing like the engine upgrade of Overwatch 2, every UI element had to go through that process, like everything, and LFG's a ton of UI. So we decided that launching with competitive 2.0 and ping and stuff like that was like more important than LFG. I think we still really like the idea of LFG and we'd like to bring it back, but it hasn't been a priority so far.
LFG was also really, I mean, Gavin touched on how complicated the UI was, but as the server engineer, it was very complicated on the server too. Like, it was just a really big feature, and I think
I heard
especially
that
once
it
we
was like
shipped
never
World
used.
Queue, we had all those like fancy role constraints and all that. It was a really big thing. So yeah, ultimately it was like, you know, I think long term we would love to find, more ways to like help players connect with each other and stuff, but it's like figuring out that perfect solution, or at least the least cursed solution, is going to be a big priority.
That makes sense.
I don't know if anyone in Overwatch 2 or the new players would know this, but a long time ago we had a preferred player that allowed you to be like,
Oh, I remember
get on
that.
that person's team. Or would you guys see that one coming back in? I know that's like an OG question.
That is, yeah, that's a long way back. So that's a funny one because at the
What happened to that?
time, we were trying to do this thing. I think internally we were kind of calling it like social matchmaking, where it was like, oh, you know, you happened to play with this player, so we're going to kind of remember that, and then if you happen to play with them again, we'll kind of like gradually make it so that eventually, you're this person's rival, and like you're always in this player's match. And it's
What?
funny because like when we had that initially, people were really confused. They were like, why is this player always in my match? Um, I don't think we necessarily described the feature very well to players at the time. And then also,
What?
it ends up being that like at GM, there's a small enough population to where you do actually see the same player. But like at Gold, the percentage of players that you play with, like imagine you're playing like today and then you play tomorrow, like the people that you're playing with tomorrow, like that person's not online anymore, right? And so there was like this weird consistency problem where like it worked not well enough for most players and then too well for like some players. It was this very strange thing. And it also, speaking of expensive things on the server, that was like a really complicated server feature because we basically made a whole social network, yeah, which
That is
in hindsight,
wild.
maybe wasn't the best use of our time. I don't think we'll ever bring that back, but I think the idea was cool, and so
Bro,
like
can you
if
guys
there's
like
ways that we can,
drop this thing that's going on in my chat? I
re-express that
also wrote
idea
on
in a
my
new
Twitter. If you guys
system
have any
that
questions,
maybe
let me
works
know so I
better,
can ask them
gives us
today.
more
If you
the
guys didn't
things that
ask
we
any
want.
questions on my Twitter, then
I
it's
think
your
we're
fault
definitely
as well.
thinking
So
about,
if you're not
like,
following
what
my
we
Twitter
can
as
do
well,
there.
take the L. Sorry. Jesus Christ. So much like fucking useless.
So Jay's going off right now. This isn't live, which I think we could probably go back and take a look. Then I'm sure there's some very interesting, questions going on in this chat right now. But I'm gonna be real with you. I've run one of these. Basically what happens is like people on the Reddits or the forums like basically just drum up each. So basically, okay, if people are happy about something, right? You don't go to Reddit, you don't go to the forums of a video game to, start, right? If you're typically happy, you keep playing it and keep enjoying it. That's kind of how it works, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just human nature is, oh, I had a good experience, and you move on. You don't go. You typically go raise the pitchforks if you're having a bad time. So I've seen it. I've experienced it. I typically just have no problem laughing at when my chat turns absolutely psychotic like that, because I don't listen. I don't read it. There's no point. And I just let my mods just go to town if I need to. So if you're wondering why Jay is probably getting kind of upset, it's because he probably doesn't have to deal with this very often, and it's fucking annoying.
Bullshit going on in my chat, dude. Like, literally hold the L. If you didn't ask a question, it's not gonna be asked today.
He's talking to his chat.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
You got the next one again.
Then why keep talking if you don't read the chat? Because let's set the context. I'm talking about when I'm having a conversation with some devs, and I've had them on my stream a few times actually. So what do you mean when I keep talking? I'm not having a conversation with you. I'm having a conversation with them. You're just in the room watching and listening. It's like we're sitting on a stage and we're having a conference and we're talking to each other about things, and you are someone that is watching. I do my best sometimes to make sure that the questions are also relatable to you as in the audience. However, though, there are certain things that you might not get or may not understand, or questions that you think that are relevant that I don't give a f about. So I'm not gonna be calling on each individual person in the crowd to talk to individually. That's just not how that's gonna work. We're gonna continue our conversation on the stage and talk about stuff because that's what we're there for. And that's what's very important when you listen to a community, because people always think that there's a lot of things that are like super valuable, right? Like they're like, everyone in the community thinks ranked is dog. Everyone in the community thinks that's typically not the case, honestly. It's typically more of like you also see other people that also conform to your idea, but in the grand scheme of things, maybe people don't actually agree with you. So anyways, vocal minority, real. It's very real.
Okay, so
it
this
depends.
was actually really cool when you guys did it for a little bit of time, but I think this also helps.
There's also a respect factor, but I'm probably just speaking to
there was a
the birds at that point.
For a little bit in Overwatch 1 that allowed you to hover over people's career profile, but if they were private, you couldn't like obviously see, but it showed you the heroes that they played. Will that be able to come back so we could like build team comps around people who like we can't look at their profile?
Yeah, I missed that one too, actually. So
that was a cool feature.
When we did like an overhaul of like public and private profile settings at some point, and we actually inadvertently broke that, and then we didn't catch it for a really long time. This is way back in Overwatch 1.
If you can't handle seeing questions like that while you're talking, you shouldn't be in a call like this. He's talking about people that are hard. He literally, you can back up and re-watch, but he was talking about people's hard spamming. I'm gonna keep it real with you. Big Daddy 69. You're in my house, and in Jay's house, the same thing. You don't understand. We're not here to serve you. You're in my house, bitch. We don't go by your rules. We go to my rules. And the same thing will happen in Jay's stream, happen in Emong's stream, and happen in SK's stream. So you might sit there and go, well, you should just handle it. Bitch, get the fuck out of my house. That's how that works. No. You don't come into my house and tell me how to live. You're a guest. That's how it works. Cope? No. It's the opposite. You have to cope. Because if you go into someone's place or their space and be disrespectful, they're going to kick your ass the fuck out. That's not your God-given right. That's not your First Amendment right if you're an American. That's not how that works. You have freedom of protected speech from the government. You say some dumb in my chat, I kick you the fuck out. Same thing can happen in Jay's chat or anyone else's chat. U.S. government ain't going to be going, fucking marshals aren't going to show up at my door. I promise you that. I promise you that.
And so at the time we didn't have like the bandwidth to bring that back, and basically the way it had worked before kind of got fundamentally broken by like the way that we changed profile private settings.
This is actually a good question. Sorry, we got derailed.
That said, I really miss that feature. I would love to bring something like that back. It's just figuring out like I don't think we'll ever bring back exactly what that was, but like having the ability to like show people what heroes you play or something like that sounds really cool to me, and I would love to build something like that.
Yeah, it was like it wasn't that long, but I remember it was a really like cool feature to look at. Like you didn't have to go to like reviews.
I think something where like you could could put three characters as your preferred heroes
characters that they played
would be fire.
That was really cool.
Yeah,
we are. People choose.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. What SK just said, actually, the letting people choose thing. That's something we've been thinking about. So like nothing to promise there, but like it would be nice if you
preferred hero
represent
system
yourself the way you want to be represented there. And so that's something we're considering.
So quick history lesson: if you used to play Overwatch, part of the reason why they even brought in private profiles is in Overwatch 1 when there was no role queue. A lot of times people flexed, right? Like people didn't want to play tank, they didn't want to play Mercy, they didn't want to play support, and in dive meta, Mercy was a must pick. You needed to play Mercy. Every game you needed a Mercy. If you didn't have a Mercy, you lost the game. So especially early in the season, sometimes you'd have players that go, well, nobody's going to play Mercy. I have to play Mercy. Otherwise, we just lose the game. So you pick Mercy. And if you pick Mercy for 3, 4, 5 games at your first starting games, and then like 1 or 2 DPS or 1 or 2 tank, right? All of a sudden, your profile looks like you're a Mercy player. And it's like, someone get the fuck on Mercy. What are you doing? It's like, I'm not a Mercy player, bro. I just flex for the first few games. They don't see that. They just look at the current season. They don't see every other season where you've been playing Winston all the time, right? So private profiles kind of took away that,
Okay, cool.
like a way to kind of bully people onto playing flex characters.
Is there going to be a way to tell how far we are from overtaking people in top 500?
It's a
there's
big
no
one.
way to tell how many wins you need from rank 100 to 99.
That's a big one. Or even from GM1 to top 500.
Actually, we have a meeting to talk about that later today. More than I do, actually. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So there's not exactly a plan yet. A plan is being planned. In season 4, we're going to show GM players how far away they are from the 500th spot on the leaderboard if you're not top 500. But
that's something.
That didn't answer your question, so we're thinking about it.
That answered part of it. That's really cool.
It's something. I don't like that that's just being
Is there
planned,
any
though. That means it's
plans to
really
bring
far
back,
away.
Like a number that we could see instead of just a GM5, like 4032 SR or something.
So just asking if there's going to be SR again.
So in season 4, we're kind of, like when you get a rank update, we'll be showing you a more granular like percentage of that rank update, like where you are in your division. So hopefully that kind of helps some of that desire. It's funny, like, I know a lot of players were unhappy about us removing SR, but from like the matchmaking end, it actually gave us a whole lot of flexibility. I don't think we've ever really talked about this, but like when we, like in ranked, when we had SR was kind of like
My guy's
tied
still
to
going.
MMR, right? Like they kind of moved pretty much the same way. And because of that, our hands were kind of tied when it came to like expressing players' uncertainty and things like that, because players really expected kind of like a consistent amount of SR. Like, if you won and you went up 20 SR and then you lose and you go down 30 SR, like players are going to be, that's going to be like very confusing, right? And so you're probably not going to be happy about that. Ultimately, like hiding that let us make the rating system a whole lot smarter in how it deals with like uncertainty, because basically we kind of like we had made it so that the rating system wasn't actually working optimally to kind of like make sure that we are giving players kind of a fairly consistent MMR update. So now what we're doing is like ratings can move faster in ranked. We're able to like move much faster if we're less certain about a player. Because like we don't have to show players that per match update anymore. We're also able to like there's all these fancy things.
I think this isn't answering Jay's question, but Jay's question also was about SR. So
Glico. There's like other rating systems that we've incorporated ideas from that, like instead of looking at one match, you're looking at like a collection of matches, and there's like very fancy things you can do kind of with that signal that we're able to do because we don't have to just show you like, you won, your rating went up by this amount. And so I don't know if that answered your question at all, but that's
I'll take a stab at that one too. So like on the one hand, MMR is like our best guess about your skill, right?
Okay.
But we also know that that's like far from perfect. That's just a best guess. So it's only ever comparing you to players you've played against. Morgan has said this recently, but like one of the whole purposes of building a system like this is so that we can rate people, one person against a population of many millions, but they've only played against maybe a few thousand of those ever, like, so like rating them against all those people is kind of the goal there. So it won't be perfectly accurate even with thousands of games. And like from psychologically, we as humans, we want to see that number. Like we want to know the number, even though I'm telling you it's not perfect, you still want to see it, right?
Yeah.
So then on the other hand, I'm human too, and I'm hearing feedback from you guys, the content creators, from the community. I'm reading Twitch chat right now, my own real life friends, like
poor Gavin.
So like as a system
reading
designer,
Twitch chat,
I have a privilege to be able to do that. So I do go and look at my MMR. Like I want to see that number. I want to see my friends' MMR. I want to understand the system as well as possible.
Wait, so
and that helps us improve things.
You think if I buy Gavin some like Chipotle, he'll tell me my MMR?
But I also know, looking at it, that it's imperfect, and that like if we showed that people would say, well, this isn't quite right, or that isn't quite right. These two people compared to each other aren't quite right. Well, maybe they've never played against each other before. You know, a few weeks ago, Andy showed me a game. Community manager Andy showed me a game that he was in, and I showed that to Morgan, and we were like, oh, that was a mistake. That shouldn't have gone that way. And so like some of the things that went out with season 3, I would say would have fixed that game. But
Well, if I gotta pay extra for guac,
so we are looking at
it's
it,
not
and
happening.
I feel you.
Not
And
even
that's
interested.
why, you know, we are making changes.
So going back to what you were saying though, would you ever allow, hypothetically, for, let's say, GMs to, you know, 5-sack again?
Yeah, that one. So this is the Flats question, right? Like
Yeah.
the did he just say? Hold on. What?
GMs to, you know, 5-sack again?
Yeah, that one. So this is the Flats question, right? Like
Yeah.
How did I catch a random stray? The did I do? Nah, he's buying me Chipotle now.
The inevitable. I say with Flats, this is a bingo question. So
I got shot twice. Like what?
that one. So this is the Flats question, right? Like
Yeah.
the inevitable. I say with Flats, this is a bingo question. So this is one we're like constantly debating internally. We know how bad it feels to not be able to play with your friends. SK says don't do it. So
How's that the Flax
you
question?
know, we
I
know other
always
games
ask
have
that.
solutions for this. The grouping restrictions.
The reason it's the Flats question is because I try to get my opinions well constructed to a lot of people. A lot of times, that's it. It's just they know this. They know I'm more vocal. They sit in my chat. I've talked to them, you know, like other places. I had a 35-minute conversation at the August summit we went to. Remember when we all went to the sneaky Blizzard meeting in August before Overwatch 2 launched? Gavin and me literally, so we all got a 30-minute break to leave the room, go get water, go to the bathroom, go get a snack. We sat there and talked about ranked for 30 minutes. So he knows
Morgan
me.
said, give us a lot of match
He knows
quality
me.
when he was talking about that earlier. So like we kind of ensure that people are playing against the best matched person in GM. And I want to just go down the GM rabbit hole for a second here, because we start to get into like a stratosphere of skill, right? Like GM, things get weird when people are that good. And the metrics we had that told us about win rates before start to apply less and less. So like I'm sure you know JNS.
Flats take the L, tap out, take a knee and lead on the ropes. Yo, VV, yo, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you, my guy. I hope that day doesn't come where I take the L, tap out, take a knee and lead on the ropes. Because if that day comes, it means I just don't care anymore. And I'm scared about that day. Because who's gonna care? Who's gonna try to formulate things properly? Because there's people in this community who I think have good opinions on things sometimes. Like, I'll give you a good example. I think Samita was a lot of times right about things he talked about, like with Brig and whatnot. But I think he really failed with how he communicated his feelings and how he was able to be a mature and be emotionally mature with how people responded. Because you don't go to Twitter to start fights with people to get a change. Like, it doesn't work. If I make a tweet about something I really don't like, it's just because I like want at this point to be like, I am fed up. This is literally the stance I'm taking. I'm not here to debate. That's it. Like, it's like, this needs to change now. Good example was season 2. At the start of season 2, I was like, this is bad. Like, they are up Overwatch 2, season 2, real bad, real fast. And they pivoted. They made changes. They knew like everyone was kind of upset, but everyone kind of collectively was like, hey, we don't like what's happening here, right? If I decide to not do it anymore, right? There's only a few other options of people who also probably would do it. I just care. And whether you agree or disagree is fine. You don't have to agree with me on everything. I never asked for that. But what I will always try to do is I will say what my opinions are. I will back them up with some logic or reasoning or hell, even emotion and feeling of why I feel a certain way. Like, for example, with stacking, I hate not being able to play with my friends. That's more emotional, right? That's okay. You don't have to agree with me with everything. I'm not asking you to. But I will always try to give it my reasoning, and then I will pretty much just back away. That's it. You can take it, or you can leave it. That's okay. So, I hope that day doesn't come where I take the L and just kind of give up. Because at that point, I probably won't play Overwatch anymore.
Okay, no, but like, we have at GM, we have OWL players, we have contenders players, we have streamers. All those people are often top 500, but like, there's like layers there, right? OWL players tend to beat contenders players, tend to beat some streamers. You know, it depends on the streamer and what they're doing. But like, you guys are talking to your chat. I get it. Like, you have a lot going.
See, yeah, I never lost anything in my life, chat.
Like, so like, we have those layers, and we want to match them as closely as we can against each other, right? So like, you know, allowing big stacks means the matchmaker maybe can't actually find a match that is fair. Like if the stack is big enough, then if it's 3 OWL players, for example, maybe there aren't 3 OWL players on the other team to match against. So that's all to say that, you know, we acknowledge how badly it sucks not to be able to play with your friends. And right now we don't have a plan to change this rule, but we do have plans. We are thinking about ways that let GM players play together in a competitive setting that isn't necessarily our regular competitive role.
What do you mean by that?
Okay.
What do you mean by
that's
that?
It's really funny that you say that, because I remember when Lucio Ball came back and me, Flats, and Emong actually wanted to trio Lucio Ball, but we couldn't because our MMR. Yeah. So yeah, that was unfortunate.
I told you.
Yeah, with Lucio Ball, that one is like, so going back in time. Let's go back to the beginning of time for a second, to like 2017. At the beginning of Overwatch, like we probably made a kind of a bad choice when we initially set up the way that MMR worked for Lucio Ball. And so bringing that in kind of from other game modes that it didn't necessarily apply to. And then moving forward, we've made better choices where Lucio Ball ratings apply to Lucio Ball ratings. So like your modern Lucio Ball is like based on your previous Lucio Ball. But you know, in the future, we do want to do better with that. And like, let's say we make a new version of Lucio Ball that's Lucio Football or whatever, like then
why not
like,
stack it Lucio Ball though?
From,
who cares?
You know, well, or not pull from previous anything. It would probably be more like a clean slate, or have a new solution, right? That's not necessarily putting you in that same.
Come on.
Although we're always going to be, I think, you know, when we seed like your ranked, like for mystery heroes, we did this too, right? Where like your ranked mystery heroes rating, we were looking at some of your other ranked ratings to try to inform where to put that, because like honestly, it's like, you know, there's like the nice idea of putting everybody at like, you know, gold 3 or whatever, and like people figure it out, but like match quality is not good if we do that. Like however bad match quality is, it gets a lot worse if we do that. It's kind of the same thing as like an MMR reset. And so we do kind of like look at your other ranks in order to kind of give a sense of like where we're supposed to, you know, start you out.
MMR reset would be a bad thing.
But you're still moving around really
at this point,
fast
absolutely.
So, you know, you'll get to where you need to be.
If there was to be an MMR reset, it needed to be at the beginning of Overwatch 2. We have passed that. We cannot go back. There will never be an MMR reset. It's impossible.
Play enough matches.
Okay.
Well, okay, next one. How fast?
It's Lucio Ball. What the fuck? Who cares? But that's a good point. That's a good point. If it's Lucio Ball, who cares? Why shouldn't I be able to play with my friends? You're on the right track. I only want to play Lucio Ball with friends. That's all it is. I don't care about dominating rank. That's all I want. So I just want to play. You're on the right track though.
MMR catch up to SR. If you go on a huge loss streak and drop, where would your MMR be? Would you match with Diamond Plat players, or does MMR swing more slowly?
I just want to say that was a question from Twitter as well. Someone actually.
Nice.
Yeah, actually,
I stole it from Jay's chat.
Before I let Morgan go on that one, let me just remind people that MMR and SR are not the same thing. They're 2 different numbers.
So someone on Twitter actually gave a good question.
Almost exactly the same.
Rare footage.
So, yeah.
Yeah, MMR and rank.
Rare footage.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. That's a good Twitter user. That was a good question. So
never seen again.
So yeah,
like Bigfoot.
I touched a little bit on this, but like back when we had SR that we were showing to players, like the SR and the MMR, they weren't exactly the same, but they moved very similarly, and that did kind of constrain us. So now, you know, we added things like momentum and uncertainty about like basically it's like if you win or lose 9 games in a row, something's probably wrong. So we are actually moving your ratings faster. I can't tell you exactly how fast, how many matches it would take you to go from like, one rank to another, but it will be faster. And we're actually trying to make it faster still. Like we're like the ideal case is the ratings move as fast as they possibly can without having the bad downsides of like players swinging around all over the place wildly. But, ideally we want players to get to where they're supposed to be as quickly as possible. And so, like at this point, it's much more based on like how many matches have you played recently. If you haven't played at all, we're more uncertain about you. If you've played like 100 matches, or less uncertain about you. It's things like, how much of a win or loss streak are you on? If you're winning 10 matches in a row, you're going to get more rating than if you win just one match in a row, something like that. And we're kind of constantly adding new signals to that process, to that system, to try to make it smarter. Because ultimately we want kind of this very detailed view of like, how well do we think we understand you as a player? Well, not, everything about you, but just how good you are at the video game. So yeah, hopefully that's a good enough answer.
I'm not gonna lie to you.
So I'm gonna hit you with a curveball here, though. So, do you think there will ever be an MMR reset?
No, absolutely not.
No, we're not. We're never gonna reset MMR. So ultimately, I think the best way forward is to make ratings move faster, because the faster ratings move, the faster we're picking up on, like right now, if you win like 60% of your matches and you lose 40% of your matches, your rating's moving up, but it's moving up kind of slow because you're not like wildly, like you're not winning 100% and you're not winning 0%, right? So ultimately, like we want players to get to where they're, roughly in the right ballpark of their skill, which, like I said, ends up where they'll end up winning about 50% of their matches. It just, in some cases, it just takes too long, and players can feel stuck, right? Ultimately, I think we'll be able to make ratings move faster, but we never want to throw out like the whole system, right? Like the whole system actually has a whole lot of knowledge, because we have millions of players. I think I had said this on the interview, but like we have millions of players and most of them have never actually played each other. And so it's like, that's that knowledge about all of those relationships.
You don't want that happening either, by the way. Like, that's why when people come in my chat from TikTok and they're like, well, he's not even that good. It's like, bro, you're like silver. I would walk circles around you. You don't want us to be in the same game, my friend.
Is encoded in the existing MMRs. We just need to be better at like, if you're where you're not supposed to be, we need to move you faster. We need to figure that out faster. And so that's the problem that we really want to solve. We don't want to just reset MMRs, because that doesn't actually solve the problem. That just gets us back to square one, and then the problem's not actually solved.
Yeah. And to go back to something we said earlier, MMR's decay is a system we implemented in Overwatch 2 that was kind of new there when we launched Overwatch 2, and that system is still in place today. So, this is it's like a form of soft reset, because when we decay you, we lower your MMR and we increase our uncertainty about your MMR. So we say not only are they probably worse, but we don't really know exactly that. Maybe they left and they played Apex, the whole time, and like maybe their shooter skills have gone up, and while we
like
weren't
I
paying
did
attention to them. So like that means when a player does return, that their wins and losses will cause bigger MMR swings up or down. So like, long story short, we are kind of resetting you in small ways all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it.
Okay.
Whoa,
that makes sense.
Whoa.
And a very important question that I have.
Very interesting answer.
Do you guys ever think that there will be cards at the end of the game again? It was a great addition to the game, and I'm kind of sad that it's gone.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So we liked the cards quite a lot, but we also knew that at the end of Overwatch 1, almost no one was looking at them. Everybody would like leave before the game, like before the cards would happen. So like, they were cool. Like, I think they were really cool when Overwatch 1 launched and people saw them and they were like, oh man, this is such a neat system. But like a few years into it, people were just hitting leave. when the victory or defeat popped up,
Really?
you know. So we'd love to find a way to bring something like that back, but we would like it to be more meaningful, like more permanently meaningful, instead of just like kind of gimmicky where not as many people cared. I know, and we know some people still cared, but like, but we've been thinking about that. So yeah, we're definitely talking about that on the system design side.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I
Yeah, the
think
queues used to be
also,
ultra
like, if you
long.
think about it, the end of round, kind of that whole flow in Overwatch 1 was a very long,
Do you want the non-corpa answer to this question? What replaced the card system was the battle pass. It would just be it'd be too many screens if you went from play of the game to cards to battle pass. They want you to keep playing quickly. So putting as little restrictions between the two is a good thing. Gets you to play more often. And they replace the card system with the battle pass, right? So I'm just saying, dude, there's no
that
way
took
that's
a
all
really
done
long time to get
coincidentally.
through. And now we may have made it a little bit too short. It's like you like finish the game, play the game, then you're like out. Maybe there's like a good middle ground there.
Yeah.
That's definitely something we've
Yeah,
been talking
because
about.
like at the end of the game, I have games where people are talking, complimenting each other and whatnot, or they're trying to have a conversation, but like they have to talk so fast
Yeah.
to try to get their conversation done before the game shuts off. So
Then it
I
kicks
just
you
saw a
out and
good
goes to the
question
battle
from Jay's
pass.
chat, which was why remove it? And that it wasn't that it was really removed. It was that I mentioned it earlier. Every UI element had to be rebuilt in Overwatch 2 because new engine. So like, was it worth rebuilding if people aren't using it? And that's the question we asked ourselves. And ultimately, we didn't think so. And we do hear the feedback that people liked it, and we want to bring something like that back, but just again, maybe in a way that is more meaningful.
okay, cool.
Okay, last one. How in depth does the matchmaking go? Can it or does it account for people being like one tricks, having two of the
I don't
same
think
one
so.
trick on one team, or Junkrat
No.
one trick being really bad on one map versus really good on another?
No.
Yeah. So no, basically. It only takes into account role, not hero. So like it doesn't know which hero you're going to pick when you get in a game. There's nothing in the matchmaker, literally anywhere, that says, oh, this person is a Junkrat one trick or whatever. It doesn't know how many times you played.
And this is why the ideology of perfect matchmaking makes no sense.
Junkrat. It has no biased hero selection at all. The only thing we have is win rate expressed through MMR. So when someone wins a lot on Junkrat, then that, especially if they get maps that are Junkrat favored, then we might see their MMR go up quite a bit. But then if they get a bad map for Junkrat, then that'll affect their MMR too. It's likely that it might go down because of a loss. So we think that knowing which heroes to pick on which maps is part of.
But there's a piece that's missing there because he's talking about individually. But as a team, you load into a game and it looks like it's perfect matchmaking, but you get a Junkrat on Havana and it's GG. So like you get stomped, and that's how you probably get those games where it looks like, well, this game looked pretty almost perfectly even. What happened? That's what happened.
Of your growth as a player in Overwatch, and that should translate into your MMR. Fingers crossed. So
don't be a one
that's
trick.
the idea.
That makes sense.
We never want to we never want to get too detailed, because ultimately if we're doing something like that, we're kind of making assumptions about what a player is going to do, or how they're going to behave, and that's that's not really something that I feel like we shouldn't be doing that, right? Like we should never be like making an assumption on the player's behalf that could be wrong. The way the MMR works is kind of like, we're kind of looking at the smallest amount of information we can about a player, because we want to kind of ensure fairness. So, like Gavin said, like that player will end up kind of at the MMR of a Junkrat one trick, right? And so, that's kind of how the system will end up working for that.
That makes sense.
That's how you get games
so
you
cool.
lose at the spawn room, which sucks.
That's
But
funny.
Matchmaker can't fix that.
Doesn't account for one tricks. Last question, if you don't mind, because chat was.
I had to pee. I thought that was the last question.
Do you guys ever think you're gonna add ranked icons back to the game? Like beginning, when the game starts, it shows everyone's rank, or even bottom left when someone's watching.
I thought they said that. I thought they said this in Beyond. Like they're gonna show like matches or something. Like they're gonna show the rank in between the matches, or the like this is a GM match, but they won't show individual, right? Like I think that's already been said.
They don't know what rank I am.
that's a maybe, I guess. Like it's not one we're planning to do right now because we actually have some other ideas for that space.
There's another question.
You've heard, probably Jared talk a little bit about what we want to do to improve player progression and stuff like that. We've been thinking about using that for other things, that space in particular, which is kind of one of the reasons why we haven't seen anything from that yet. So that one's still TBD, but this goes back to that idea that we know that progression doesn't feel super good in the game right now. Like the battle pass progression feels pretty good, but once you're done with the battle pass, there's not a lot that's happening in the background there, and that's a problem we know we need to solve. So yeah, that's
yes, rank should be shown locally.
The profile
Agree.
level,
Yes.
in Overwatch 1.
100%.
Removed / retired because it was kind of a thing that made people a little bit disruptive. But yeah.
I
Okay,
have a
awesome.
follow-up
Thank you.
for that because so many people. Oh wait, you go.
Oh, really quick, I had one more thing to say about that, which was we are in season 4 going to be showing the average rank of a match on the loading screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I knew that had been talked about already.
The 10 players, well, in the middle, we'll be showing you the average rank. I don't know, maybe one day we'll get back to showing the rank.
What do you mean by locally? Oh, I mean it like the streamer mode that's in the game, in which it's client side only.
Of the individual players. There were kind of some downsides with that. And so this is kind of the first step. So it's like, tell us what you think about this. Is it enough information? Is it not enough information? But, we definitely hear players' feedback that like they want to kind of get a sense of like what kind of lobby they're in. And we want to provide that feedback too. So
is it going to be like for one team or is it both teams?
It's just both teams. It's just like the average of the entire match.
Okay.
Would it for GM1 lobbies? Would it just say GM1? Because there's a really big difference between like a top 10 or a really low GM1.
Yeah, right now the system will only say GM1. We don't do like leaderboard. Maybe in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then a follow-up for that because I swear everyone in the community is saying this. You're not hiding ranks to like hide how bad matchmaking is or whatever. That's what everyone says. Like that's not why they're hidden, right?
No,
I mean,
no.
And well, I mean, we already talked about how we know MMR is imperfect, right? Like we know that it's not a perfectly accurate stat because it's trying to capture a segment of the population to represent you again against millions. So like there will be times when you get faced off against someone that beats you that was lower MMR than you because it didn't have a concept of you versus that other person. So like, but no, no.
No, yeah, when we were designing the Comp 2.0, like ultimately we had a lot of ideas for like what we wanted to do, and we didn't ultimately get a lot of them in the game to ship. So we had this kind of idea of like more like a seasonal progression where you felt like you were getting
ranks are probably hidden for mental reasons, keeps you playing. Bingo.
Was like, hey, my SR is the same that it's been for the past 5 seasons, and it's like, well, ultimately relative to the rest of the player base, you're not actually getting better at the game or something, but like, that also doesn't feel very satisfying. So we were trying to kind of solve that type of problem, but I think we, ultimately the solution was, not perfect, and so we're season 4 we're changing that because of that feedback, right?
Don't you dare, Jay.
Hopefully season 4 makes
I gotta
makes
pee.
it clear that we were not trying to hide bad matchmaking or anything like that. We were just trying to make a feature that gave people a little more of a sense of progression.
I don't want to take too much of your guys' time as well, so feel free to stop me. But I know
It's
you
a
guys
VOD?
talked about
No, this
also
is
bringing
live.
it back. But how about the on fire? I know it's like voice for the characters are still in the game.
Yeah. So that'll
real.
The VO, like you said, is still hooked up. The on-fire system is in the design process right now, so that's on my team. And we're thinking about it, like how do we bring that back in a way that, like one thing that we didn't love about the old system was the meter, for example, like the meter was confusing. So that probably isn't something that comes back in the same way, but we're still in design discussions about a good way to bring fire back. But to be clear, we really like the fire system, and I think we all do want to bring it back. We don't have a date for you.
Oh yeah, no problem. I just
that
loved
could be
seeing
a long time.
Like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Can I ask one more to keep you here?
Okay, last question.
Stop trolling. People believe you when you say it's live.
Profile to change the peak from like rank on the.
Listen, if you can't take me trolling, because they'll believe me and think it's live, I'm gonna keep it real with you, my guy. That's called the stupid tax.
leaderboard because there's such a huge difference between top 10 when the leaderboard first comes out versus top 10 at the end of
Oh,
the season.
that's
So
an interesting
someone's
question.
peak would be like way different at the start versus the end.
I
Even know
hadn't
that
actually heard
happened.
that feedback before. Yeah, that's a really
No,
interesting one. We'll have to think
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Thanks. Sorry, it's not one I'd considered. But we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for
That was
your
a good
time.
question, actually,
Appreciate
by
it.
SK.
You guys
Thank
were
you so
amazing. It was
much.
fun to pick your guys' brains. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We're really happy to do it.
Thank you. Hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you possibly later. And you guys will probably hear me complaining. Don't worry.
Yeah, definitely. Send them along.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
so much for your time.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Chat, say bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Have a good one.
What the hell is this? Oh my god, poor Jay's DMs just got lit up. Poor guy.